Hello and welcome to today's webinar. I'm so happy to have a special guest with us today, Jens Lund, our longtime partner and very experienced ERP consultant and implementer. So welcome, Jens. Good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you. Same.
And I'm really excited about diving more into this area, but obviously, I guess everybody knows the area, but I'm sure you can come up with a different perspective than what we usually hear.
Hopefully.
But before we get started, I just want to say that we have people on LinkedIn and on YouTube. And if you have any questions for Jens, please make comments, and we can put your questions in front of the screen, and Jens can answer them. I think there will also be a chance after Jens's presentation to ask questions.
Sure.
But before we dive into your presentation and your thoughts, Jens, let's reflect a little bit. Why are we actually having this conversation still? Because I remember getting into working with IT and also having some ERP projects back in the 90s, and at those times things were failing, and now I realize that even today 70% of all ERP implementations fail.
Still failing.
That's so crazy, because haven't we learned anything in all those years? And now we even have software that is cloud-based and standardized, so there's not even that much technical risk anymore.
Nope.
So what are your thoughts on that? Why are we still failing? Why is it still going wrong?
Yeah, if I had the silver bullet, I would show it to all of you. So I think a lot has to do with, no matter what we are saying, IT projects are still relatively new to most people. And it's projects that are very, very hyped. So a lot of fancy word is used. If I'm gonna build my house, I can talk with the constructor, the carpenter, everybody, even though I have no idea how to build a house. I can see it, I can touch it. It makes it so much more easy for me to work with. And I think that's one of the reasons, but there are, of course, a lot of other reasons, but I think that's one of the main reasons. It's simply too intangible. It's not, I can't touch it, I can't see it, can't feel it.
Yeah. So even though you may have a pre-built ERP system, people just can't relate to what it will do for them.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So
okay. That makes sense. Well,
and it goes so fast, right? Compared to all the other industries, whoever comes up with the 3, 4, 5 new releases every year and a ton of new functionality, even though your business, your daily life don't change that much. So we also make it harder. We invent everything again and again and again.
Yeah.
So the poor user.
Yeah, that's true. I know that today's take on this problem is not going to be so technical. It's going to be about all the other things, right?
Low practical.
But maybe we should see what you have, and then we can have a conversation around that, and
yes,
people can ask questions.
Yes.
So let's dive into it.
Yeah. So again, it's important for me to say, I don't say I have all the answers. I will like to share how I go about some of the things, because there are so many things that can go wrong. So we won't have time to dive into them all, but I hope I can make you think a bit in a different direction. So think about, why not do it like that? So again, thank you all for being here. And as Søren said, if you have any questions, let's take a talk as we go through it. A very short intro to myself for those that don't know me. I've been in this industry for quite some years. My background is production companies, and then I shifted to IT 25 years ago and worked in developing of IT and implementation at IBM and Microsoft. Then I went out in the market 2010 and have worked since 2010 with implementation of Microsoft Dynamics solution in all different forms. First as a partner, then as a customer, and the last 14 or 10 years in the capacity of my own little company as a customer's advisor, customers project manager. So that's a very short intro to myself. So I don't have any products on the shelf that I want to sell you. I just want to share my ideas and hopefully also hear what you are thinking. The experience I'm going to talk into is about what I've done the last 10 years, and we are talking about 2022 go live, where I have had more or less the same view. So it's based on 22 go live experience here in Denmark and Sweden, Norway, Germany, US, and England. And of course, some of them went wrong and some went good. I'm better than the general statistic, but I don't say everything goes right. I also make a lot of mistakes. So for not so long ago, I stumbled over a podcast by a guy called Bent Flyberg. Some will maybe know him, some don't. He has a funny law. He calls it the iron law. Over time, over budget, under benefits, over and over again. And this is the first time I've heard a professor talk about this, and he has really statistic behind it. His statistic is based on 16,000 projects he has looked into, all kinds of projects, not only IT projects. But the funny thing is what he discovered by looking into these 60,000 projects is that by far, IT projects are those that fail the most. On the second place comes project that has to store radioactive material. Think about it. Radioactive material, that's a project that's going to last for 800 years. We are better at that than doing an ET implementation project. I think that's big. And he doesn't say 70%. He says 20% of these IT projects fail miserably. That's a hockey stick, right? So when those 20% he's talking about there are not just 10% over budget or something like that, we are talking 50, 60, 100, 150% over underachieved. And his podcast, and I can only encourage you to look into it. He talks in it in a very funny way. He's not a boring professor. He has some very provocative statements that at least made me think. So some of the things you're going to hear today is somehow inspired by his way of looking at it. So I have boiled it down to, I have 5 things that if I look back at my projects that I have been very cautious about. I am, of course, very cautious about the old known things, as you talked about, Søren, lack of executive support, too little planning, customization overload, and all those that you have heard over and over and over again. I'm sure you have heard them all. Consultant companies have written of them all, and still we are failing. But I don't think they do it simply enough. So we should take all those known risks seriously. They are all right. But I can't focus at 25 big risks every time. So I boiled it down to saying I have my top 5. And it's important to say it's my top 5 based on those projects that I work on. And I work mostly in the mid-market segment. That means not huge cost, but mid-market up to 500 people. And it has primarily been Dynamics FO and a lot of Business Central lately. That, of course, also plays into the game. What kind of ERP project are we talking about? One of the things that I mentioned it right in the beginning, the more technical focus we get, the more I think we forget the customer. We have so many tools, so many great tools, but at the end, what we are delivering, what we are producing is intangible. If I'm a warehouse worker, I can't see the code. I don't understand the code. I have no clue what it does. I just expect if I press this button, it should come up with a label that has a red dot in the upper left corner. That's all I know. So how do I, as a experienced program manager, business consultant, talk with that guy. I do not understand his language, and he do not understand my. So my take at it is showing is believing, and there's two ways of showing it to him. That is, make a lot of small proof of concept, even though it's smaller things. Make small minimal working prototype and talk processes.
Yeah.
Because if you talk processes, you talk the language of the user. If you talk all the other stuff, user scenarios, user stories, what do I know? You do not talk
Yeah.
the language of the end user. But processes can be, it can also be very consultant-like, but as I will show you at the end of this presentation, process can also be very low practical and in the user's language. So that's going to be the focus.
Yeah. If I may, I think this is a very important one because, I mean, we work a lot with process optimization, and of course, it comes from manufacturing originally, right? And that's where everybody can see what is happening. You have the assembly line and the flow, and everything is physical. But of course, when we're working with ERP projects and in these types of settings, then it's all intangible, as you're saying. It's all abstract, and
Yes.
nobody really knows what they're going to be doing and what others need to do and what the system does.
Yeah.
And probably, I guess that's some of the intangibility that you're referring to.
Yes. And especially it's getting even worse now because we all talk about let's put power to our flows, right? Let's automate them. Let the system run the flows by themselves. It becomes even more intangible, right? Because now the system do 3-4 steps for me, and I totally lose the focus. So in the end, for me, it's very simple. If you can't describe your processes, how would you describe your scope? How would you be in control of your scope? But
Yeah.
we will get back to that, and I will show you afterwards how I, in all phases of the project, use processes as a language so that we get at a combined understanding of what is it that
Yeah.
we want here.
Actually, Jens, let's just share something from one of in the audience because he seems to have the same experience as you do. It's Chen that shares these thoughts that the only project that has gone well was the one that was based on business processes, and the rest that were driven by tools were failing.
Yeah,
That's it seems that others have similar experiences.
I so agree. I so agree.
Yeah.
That's actually why I started many years ago talking about processes, because we were in a project that we couldn't get to work. And that's where my whole process journey started. And I was a pure technology guy that came fresh out of Microsoft. I could only talk technology, but that has changed over the years.
Yeah.
So yes, the next one, and we will get back to process much more. The next one is new, my keyword. No matter what we say, we have to acknowledge we have been building houses and everything for thousands of years. We have built cars for hundreds of years. IT projects is still relatively new. And how often do I not hear a customer say, how hard can it be? Let's try it. If you come up to a customer and say, hey, you need to spend 20% on project management, many customers would say, why? They simply do not have the understanding how much can go wrong if you do not control the project. And then on top of it, we come up with a lot of new project methodologies. We can talk Scrum, Waterfall, and 1,000 in between. That's again a language that the customer do not understand. We lose them. So my point is around this with you is find a very experienced project manager as a customer. Never have an internal as the anchor point. But if that internal person have never ever run an IT project or a ERP project, it will mostly fail. And for the partners, I shouldn't complain because my job is because the customer do not have a project leader, a project manager, or the partner do not focus enough effort on it. Many times because the customer won't pay for it. But if the customer won't pay for it, you need to be ready to take the risk and say, I maybe will get a miserable project out of this, which is nobody wants. So, and collaboration. The best projects I have had is where I have had the best team, not the best technician, not the best tools, not the best whatever, but the best all-round team. Team makes everything work. Together, you can do whatever it takes. So team building is so important. So that's, and then we have the last one, and this can maybe be a bit provocative, but it's not meant like that. Flexibility. That's normally we praise that as a good thing. If you want to deliver on time, on budget, well, with the promised benefits, etc., flexibility is a bad thing, because flexibility means you try something new all the time. And if you try something new all the time, you are on unknown territorium and you will fail. Find a proven model if you want to deliver on time. Sometimes we need to go in and have a lot of flexibility, but then we should plan for the risk. Again, break down in small tangible bites, the known Lego concept, right? Find your small Lego bricks, and with the same bricks, you can build all the houses that you need. I have a good friend of mine introduced me to, I don't know if the most of you know it, Kinevin model. I don't know if I pronounce it right. It's Welsh, and it's a model developed by David Snowden in the 90s, which actually helps you look at the world in a simpler way. He looks at it like this, saying, on the right side, we have the known world, where things can be simple and complicated. And on the left side, we have the unknown, the complex, and the chaotic things. Our job when we go into a customer implement is always to try and move as much as we can into the simple area, because then you can set up a realistic plan, a realistic resource demand, and you know what's going to happen. There is a clear relation between cause and effect. It's what they call the known unknown, or the known knowns.
Yeah.
And it sounds so simple logic, but think about it. Try and take each of your tasks in your project plan, no matter if it's in Microsoft Project or in DevOps, and say, how can I move it down? How can I move it from being where most of us are as a consultant? We are in the complicated area. That means we can analyze our way through and say, okay, if this is the situation and based on my knowledge and with this code, I have a solution. I have the right answer, and that's an important thing. I have the right answer. But if the right answer demands a specialist to come up with the right answer, then it's complicated. And complicated stuff takes more time, takes more testing. So try, and if you can move stuff down. I would go so far and say everything we deliver as IT people should belong in the complicated or simple. We must never, ever end up in the complex area where we don't know what's going to happen. I still see a lot of projects where they do that. I still see they go into an area in a company and say, okay, let's hope it works. Have you tested it? Have you tried it? No, but we believe so. Belief is something we do in the church, not in a project. And a lot of the stuff that happens in the complex area is to do with people, where IT consultant, IT specialist, developer love to talk about complex things. They should never ever take that word in their mouth. They should at maximum be allowed to talk about complicated things. I know it all sounds very obvious, but try and go in and read about this model and try and go in and analyze each of your tasks and see, can I move them? Can I simplify them? Can I take the flexibility out? And then I guarantee you, you will have a greater success for delivering on time, on budget, with the promised benefits. That was a long talk just for that. You can hear I was thrilled when I learned about that model.
I guess you can also say that now that all the tools have become standardized and out of the box, at least we have
Yes.
simplified the IT part.
Yes.
But then the rest of the tasks are more difficult, because now we're no longer tailoring the IT to people. So now they are the ones that maybe are the biggest risk in the project.
Yeah.
So that's why we probably have to spend that extra time
Yes.
having them understand how this standard tool supports their work, right?
Yeah, you're so right, because how often don't you hear a customer say, I would rather adjust my processes than adjust the tool.
Yeah.
So, and when that happens, we quickly, if we do not make it tangible, end up in the complex area.
Yeah.
Because the IT people, they have a good practice and best practice model. So they will survive.
Yeah.
But they will survive because they have the knowledge. Yes.
Yeah.
Let's move on. The next one I have, which is everybody knows it, customization overload. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. Customization has always been bad, but now where we go into the SaaS world, it is super bad, because now my system is going to change twice a year or even after. And then I have connected it to another system that has a different release wave, and so on and so on and so on. So even though technical-wise, with extensions, etc., it's more manageable, I would still claim it's even worse now, where we get all this again flexibility. We get new function features all the time. That just means we're going to be much better in control. We need to be much better in control of our implementation of our system. We need to talk business, and the way we talk business is by talking processes. So customization is the worst.
We had a webinar with Microsoft where Peter Jacobsen from Microsoft, he also shared the fact that now Microsoft, with the new models, they are pushing the customization into the business processes, because obviously nobody can change the system or should change the system any longer. Well, then the only place where you can really customize is the business process, but that requires a much more effective approach to business processes, because that's exactly where people can find the flexibility they will otherwise be missing.
Yes.
Yeah, good point.
Good. I will move on, because I would love to show you how I
please
translate this process into real low practical. How do I do it? Because I don't think I've said that much new, but I want to show you how simple it can be done. Ending up by a use case. The next one is the old one, optimize bias. I want to be the grumpy old guy and say, why? How many projects haven't been sold with an over ambitious strategy, over promising just to get the project? There are so much optimist bias in most projects. If you go into a project and the first you ask the CFO, CEO, or whoever, or CIO, if it's not a real project that is founded in the organization, say, what's the main 3 reasons why we do this? Most will say, we have a lot of good reasons. Give me the 3 best reasons. Keep on asking, why are you doing this? Not to provoke them, but to get it very clear. Is it because we simply do this because the old system is out of support? Do we do it because we can't cope up and get enough new people? What is the main reason? It's so important to know when we're going to prioritize later on. Why are we doing this? So again, and then the biggest risk, we all should take a steep look at ourselves and say, okay, where is my personal bias? Where is my limitation? Where do I normally go wrong? Because we all have our own bias, and you don't know it unless you ask people, help me figure out where's my bias. Cool. Let's move on. My own one-pager. This is really cut into the bone. I always try to tell the customer, plan slow, act fast. Use a lot of time up front to figure out, why do you want it? What do you want it? When do you need it? Before talking to a lot of partners or anybody else, because they will derail your thoughts. Plan slowly. spend a lot of time on figuring out what, build a solid foundation so that you can stand firm. And when then you push the button, say, now we go, then you move fast, because an open window, a project that runs for 2 or 3 years, will run into a lot of problems because so much is changing, and you will be forced to be more flexible than you maybe can handle. So cut it down in small pieces, plan slow, act fast. This is a very, very keystone. And then the oldest rule in the project book, everybody knows it, but not many respect it. We have time, we have resources, we have scope. If you change your scope, you need to add more resources or time. If you take away resources, you need to do something about time or scope. If you do not do that, your quality will fail. And then, as I said, stay away from cutting edge technology unless you are risk-taking business, and that's where your money is. But otherwise, stay away from it. Stick to known people, known processes. It is so important that, again, the team works.
What do you mean by that, Jens? Known people and known processes? Is it because you just need to know your processes before you start, and or known people? What is that?
Yeah, known people and processes. If I play big attention to having some good stories. So if I know from my colleague that is a CFO at the company next by, have good experience with this and this company, that's a good place to start. So know the history, know the people, know what they can do, because we see so much PowerPoint, we see so much advertising, we get confused. So again, work with people that you know, or with people that you know somebody, if you can. I know it's not always possible, but if you can, stick to what you know.
So Jens, there's a comment from one of in the audience. I think we are preaching a little bit to the choir.
Yeah. Okay.
As they say.
Yes.
We seem to have a lot of experienced people here, and they know a lot of it as well. But that's it's crazy that these things are still happening when we all know it. I guess the customers don't always know it.
Yeah.
But thanks for that comment.
Cool. You're right. So how do I go about it? Let's be very, very low practical. We have 50 minutes left. And again, I don't say this is the way to go about it. This is how I have had success in the mid-market. I acknowledge if you're into an enterprise market spread over many countries, you need to have a bit of a different approach. First thing, I don't like big documents. We still see a lot of FTDs, TDDs, SFDs, call it what you want to, where the partner writes big chunk of paper, 150 pages or more, have worked with the customers for 3-4 months. The customer gets a week to read it through and approve everything. That doesn't work. It's simply not fair. You cannot make big decisions based on a lot of dead documents, no matter how well organized and how well founded the agenda or the relevant the text is. It's a dead document. You need to have a data model so that you can analyze and break it down into small Lego bricks, and a big FTD cannot be broken down to small Lego bricks.
But I think, Jens, if we're honest, much of this is also for legal reasons, right? When you have specified exactly what you're going to do and gotten the customer to sign it, then
No, I don't agree. Why a long list where you have listed all the activities, the jobs in scope, the deliveries in scope, where you have signed it? I haven't seen any law that tells me I have to deliver 150 pages for you. A contract is something else, right? But I'm talking about the typical Microsoft deliveries that many partners still stick to: FTD, TDD, FSD. I have a customer right now. They work with a partner for 6 months. They have a week to read 320 pages. How should they cope with that? How should they make a decision? It's not fair. Okay, move on. So let's go to the next one. So again, I will I always try to build a good data structure to avoid these documents. I will show you in a minute. And then again, the next thing I spend a lot of time on is again processes. So let's move on and see how does it look. When we talk data model, I don't say that this is the right model. I just say we need a model where the process is in the center, because the process is the language that the customer talks. So we need somehow to be able to build a structure. This is my typical structure. Could also be that all the data are in DevOps, where I have my all my models for both processes and PBIs and what have you. I don't care where it is, as long as you have a data model. That means if I go into this model and I say now these 5 processes are out of scope, then I also know which application is maybe out of scope. I also know which test cases can be out of scope. I also know which integration can be out of scope. That sounds so logical, but give me your FTD and I will tell you, okay, process X, Y, Z, or this and this is out of scope. What is the consequence? Nobody knows. Cannot analyze big documents. That's why we still need documents. That's not what I'm saying. But the big decision should not be based on that. That should be based on visualization and data model. And there can be many data models. The reasons why I also have put in Glue or a BPM tool is, one thing is what we do in the process, in the project. As soon as the project is delivered and we have gone live, I don't care about my board of tasks or my PBIs or my sprints and all that. That's history. I need a place where I can keep the project alive after going live. And there, Glue or any other BPM tool, I think is good. We of course need DevOps because again, that's the deployment tool we have, right? So we need that. But again, away with big documents, get a data structure in place, no matter how it looks. There are many ways of doing that. Since processes is so important, we cannot just say processes. Everybody have a different opinion on processes, and I think everybody around this table have spent way too many hours drawing visual diagrams that are just ending up in a folder somewhere. We need to have a structure. We need to have a common language to talk processes. I don't care what language we are using. I have used APQC because I've used that for the last 15 years, so I have learned the language. And that's always a barrier. But without that language, without that structure, it's tough to put process in the center, because you don't have a uniform language, you don't have the same layer, you don't have the right approach to when do I talk on which level. So again, SCORE, APQC, whatever, use that. Microsoft have taken a attack at this many times. Lifecycle, SureStep, and you name it. They have all failed. Why? Because they do not maintain them. That's why I very keen on say, I don't want to have the Microsoft model, because next year they come with something new because they are so flexible. I use APQC. They have been around for 20 years and they still update their process framework twice, 3 times a year.
I heard that they are also trying to use APQC as the basis for the fast track.
But they have done that for the God knows how many years in different tools. And we are always ending up with a tool. For me, this is a language. It's not a tool thing. So how I use it, I want to illustrate for you. So fundamentally, the rest of this presentation, I will show you how I use APQC and Glue as my BPM tool, could also be visual, to make the project tangible in all phases of the project, from the first, what should we do, until after go live. Because that's the key. If I only use processes in 1 or 2 steps, don't bother. I want to use them in all phases, also after go live. So the reason why I like, oh, sorry, something went wrong here. My mistake, 2 seconds. And this is the only advertising I'm doing for you, Søren. The rest comes out of my heart. The reasons why I love Glue is that it is very good for making the process relevant for the user, which also my business case in the end will show you. I have never ever gotten the same amount of involvement. So that's the main reason. It has a lot of nice features. It can do a lot of fancy things, but basically it is because I find it's the best tool I have seen for making it relevant, involving the users, and thereby by involving the users, I'm getting rid of one of the biggest hurdle. I make it tangible for them. We now can talk their business and not technology. And the way we do it, if we go very practical again, very short into the APQC, it helps me structure the discussion. I don't rat hole into details too early. That
Jens,
can
what are
be,
we seeing here?
yeah. What we are seeing here, yes, is a typical implementation model. They can look in many different ways, but most have something with some investigation, and then some analyze, some design, development.
So it's not like your preferred model. It's just a generic model.
It's the old sure step actually.
Okay.
And then we have a lot of different ways of going about, either using sprint, waterfall, whatever. My main point here is that again, plan slow, use a lot of time before involving too many technical people, and then act fast. That's why I also love running in sprints, because that's a way of cutting it down. Act fast. Don't spend more time on one model or a group of processes than necessary. But again, when we start a project with the customer, APQC had these 5 levels. I don't know if everybody's familiar with it, but it has 5 levels, where the top level is category, and a category could be human resource, it could be finance, it could be service, very, very high level. But on level 2, we go a bit further down, and now I've just taken an example from HR. Do we want to manage employee onboarding in our ERP implementation? Yes, no. That's the only thing I focus at here in the beginning of the project. Is it something we want to have in scope? Yes, it is. Okay. Then we go to the next level. That means now we are starting to envisioning the solution. Then there's a whole bunch of level 3 processes. Do we want to use it for developing and training employees? Now we are at the same track. And then that's where we stop without the partner, because the first focus is, when I say plan slow, is what is it that we are talking about? What is it that we want? Too many people start to talk about how way too soon. I can't talk about how I want to do this in the beginning. I should focus on telling the partners, what is it that I want, not how. So use the how to make your RFP, request for a proposal, request for investment, whatever, and talk that language with the customer from day one. That means at the day that the partner comes in, he knows exactly what is in scope. And then you can, in the analyze phase, together with the partner, deep dive and say, okay, let's look at how it goes, because my claim is that down to level 3, that means this one, we are totally system independent. If it's a business central, if it's an FO, if it's a PO, whatever, we are talking the same language. If we get down to level 4, the solution is going to look differently depending on if it's an FO, PO, SAP, or whatever. That is why we need the partner for that one. Again, don't start talking about details before you're ready. And that's why we start talking using prototypes. Right now, we are still just talking activities. We haven't talked about flows or anything. We're simply talking about what should the system be able to support. And in this case, it's just as important to talk. Maybe that is supported by a spreadsheet. That's okay. Even though I hate to love spreadsheets, or the other way around, it's part of the solution. Spreadsheets is here to live forever. Mails, they are all part of the solution.
Are you not using the process catalog in Glue, where you can sort of show it visually? Or
yes, I will come to that. This is just to say I use APQC to be sure I do not rat hole into details too early, because think about how many workshops have you been in where you have sit and exchanged ignorance. You are talking about stuff with people that are not dressed to have that conversation with you. We spend so much time upfront.
Yeah. If I may just add a point, Jens, it seems that this is for me where you are quite different in your approach, because a lot of the partners and vendors that we talk to, they say this is out of scope. This is the customer, they need to do that. And we assume they have done it already.
Yeah.
And when they in fact haven't done it, then you have the basis for failure, right? Because you actually acknowledge that most likely they haven't done this. You have to help them. If you don't help them, you're gonna see failure because they don't have their business processes under control.
How should I define my scope if I can't tell you which processes, which activity should be supported by an IT system? How it should be supported, I have to do it together with the partner. So I agree with the partner. The customer do upfront have to make up his mind to what I call level 3. Then the partner is invited based on his knowledge of these level 3, the right products, and then you go one step deeper with the partner, and then you make your process map. Let's just see how it looks. Could be looking like this, right? We are making a process map. We could also link our requirements to this process map if you want to work with requirements, but it's all a matter of figuring out what is in scope. The big thing of using APQC is I now have a checklist. If you ask somebody, is HR in scope? Yes, it is. Okay. What HR processes are in scope? Which HR process do we have? I don't know. APQC is a long checklist. You simply look at it and say, yes, we do it, or no, we don't do it. If we do it, where do we do it? Who does it? Not how, but where, who, and when.
Yeah, Jens, we have a good question, I think, which is assuming we have a company that's already ISO certified and they have map things.
Yeah.
How does that work with APQC? Would you, in such a case, would you just say, okay, fine, you have it?
If they have it, the ISO 9001 must be based on some process documentation. I will, of course, look at that. So if they have it, but normally it has been done from a different angle. I have actually done the other way around, that people have used our implementation process setup to afterwards get their ISO 9001.
Yeah. But I guess the person, the one who asked these questions is right, that ideally the customer has all this sorted out beforehand and they are at a high degree of maturity, right? Yeah. But in reality, most often they are not.
I would say, and it sounds rude, 99% of my customers are only at the maturity step 1 or maybe 2. And often when you get into a company, some part of the company is on level 2, but the rest of the company is on level 1. And in that case, the whole company is on level 1 because they do not talk the same language. So again, let's get map. What is it that we do in this company? Try and do the test, right? Go into the elevator, point at the first person you know, meet in the company, ask him, what do you do? People say, I do a lot. But why is it so hard for people to say, my job as a purchaser is these, here I have to be informed, here I'm responsible. Why is that so hard?
Yeah.
Because we don't do it. What I do here is actually now I shift from having a pure map where I map who is doing what and where. I export that into Glue and use that to design my operating model. Can look in many, many different ways, but the operating model is talking pure customer language. You can see again, no APQC number, no nothing. But here I have grouped and turned it into the customer language. If we have time, we can show afterwards. That's what I do in the analyze phase. This is enough for me to go out in the market and find my right vendor who understands my flow.
Yeah, so if I understand you correctly, APQC is just a way to get the customer started and get the conversation going, and then they will turn it into their own. Yeah, good point.
I'll show that afterwards. And again, because I've said in level 3, now this is me making a very bad PowerPoint here. You can't see what to say, but this is a process 4.3.2 purchase products. I can see in the APQC model, there are these, what do we have here? 7 activities that typically belong to that process. I simply here accept, okay, I take them in. Those I transfer into my Glue as my repository. That means now I have a repository of a lot of process description, not flows, process descriptions telling me what is it that can typically be used in this process. This is what I do together with the partner in the analyze phase. Then we move on, and then now we start making it specific. This is for a Danish customer, right? Where now you can say it's in Danish. It says vareindkøb, it says purchase order, max mean inventory. Now we suddenly translate the APQC. We keep the numbering, but now we translate it into the customer's own language. And now we really start to getting somewhere. So when we get out of the analyze phase, the customer will know exactly what is it that we have in scope. That's a very strong foundation for going into the design phase, because now we start talking flows. Until now, we have not talked flows. We have just talked processes and the activities. Now we go in and take all the activities we have in scope, add the ones that are not in, and put them into a swim lane. Now we start doing the classic business process modeling design. If we tried to do that earlier, we would fail, because we do not have a common language internally in the company and together with a partner. This work is where we did all that work in 2 months with a customer that was totally unexperienced in doing that. That is the foundation for moving on to the next phase, where we say, okay, there's a lot of tools in Glue to maintain states and so on and so on. But now we start to go even further, because where do we want to use all this?
Jens, if I may, just a quick clarifying question. When you're going from the first phase and down, is it also different levels of the organization? Because I can imagine the initial scoping would be at a very high level, and then you kind of go deeper and deeper into the organization.
Yes, the first step here, the very first step, is with the management team.
Yeah,
they decide what's in scope. As soon as they have set the scope, we, together with the project team, goes one level deeper. That means now we go down to the activity level to figure out which activity is included in the processes that are in scope. And then the next step comes, and now we involve the end users to figure out how exactly should the flow be. And now we start using the roles from Business Central or wherever, because why should we have different security roles in our flow than we have in our ERP system? Why shouldn't they be the same? And now we start adding all the details as who is responsible for what, when, where. We use a hierarchy model that is also embedded in Glue, or we just stick to a simpler model. We also start at the lowest level to add our SOP work instructions where it is needed. All that can be done in Visio, in SharePoint, in Word document, but you lose the structure, you lose the handling of all these activities. So again, and there we are at the lowest level. And what is this used for? This is used for the next one. Now we need to test, because we have many kinds of tests, right? We have system tests. We don't need this for system test. Function test. What's a function test? That's all the activities we have in the scope, right? That is defined with an SOP or wherever. And again, we do only describe the critical one. And a critical process for me is two ways. Either it's a process that is done very often with many people, with many change of experience. A process that is done once a year with a very experienced person, I don't want to spend the time drawing it. So I would only focus at the critical one where it happens a lot.
So Jens, if I may sort of ask you or clarify, so it seems that the business users are really driving this. They are the ones specifying the activity in the process, and hereby creating almost their own test cases, right?
Yes, correct.
I see that as a very big difference, because all the partners we speak with, everybody's always saying, yes, we work with processes, but there's a big difference whether you see a process as something that is very system-centric, something that happens inside the system, or something that spans the employee experience, the full end-to-end flow that somebody's experiencing when they go to work.
And by this, again, we keep the the ball on the half of the customer. We talk the business, we talk their language, and the rest of us are just delivering the tool to support their business and not take over, which often happens. And then you have lost. In the end, and respect of time, I'm speed talking a bit. Where does it all end? Because now we have gone live. Everything is happy. We have tested it. Everything works. I just took an example here. I took the release note from Business Central release Wave 1, 2024, and I think there were 20 some functional improvements. Be more productive when entering timesheets, down to rating projects. You can invoice to multiple customers. I can now, by reading this, translate it into APQC language. So I'm not nervous. I know exactly where to go in and glue and find which processes should I retest. And the processes, if we take the last one, I should retest is those. Either those that starts with 461 dot something, and all the activities belonging to creating contracts, etc., etc. That gives me the confidence that the system will keep on working again and again and again. And that's why in a SaaS world, I think this is even more important than it was in the old days. Because in the old days, nothing happens. If the computer was under my desk, if I don't touch anything, nothing happens. People will know over time. But in this setup, it will change twice a year or even more. Just to put some numbers, because the most excuse I hear, and I use the word excuse, is, yeah, I know, we simply don't have the time for it. I would turn it around and say, you simply don't have the time not to do it. This is a real life example. They have been working on developing for 2 or 3 years. We went in and said, we need to get back on track. So together with the super user team, that means people from the business and some people from the IT, we in 2 months defined, using the APQC structure, 1,000+ activities that were linked together in 100 critical processes. We took this team because they knew it, put them into a room, and then we tested, and sorry, my friends, the hell out of the solution for 2 weeks. That meant in 2 weeks, we actually did more testing than most companies did. These 1,000 processes and 100 critical processes ended up in 800 and some test cases that we ran through, and they went live 6 weeks ago, and it was a success. And end of story.
Well, that's great. Just a couple minutes before we end up, I know we are a little bit running out of time. We had no problem. I think it was very interesting, Jens. So before we end, let's just reflect a little bit. Because what I hear you say, if I'm going to summarize a little bit, is that now that with SaaS and with standard solutions, the IT risk is more or less gone. So we are in the realm of the business needs and the business processes, the business users. And what you're doing is you're turning them into co-creators, more or less, right? Because you're bringing them on board and they are taking charge in really defining their own processes, their own test cases. You help them, you facilitate them. And thereby you are sort of making them a very integral part of the process, of the project. And I guess from what I see, this is the real difference that I think your approach does, that it goes much further than what I normally see. Because as long as the IT party, whether it's internal, external, owns both the process and the tooling, then it's just, I'm just a customer. I'm just, I don't like what I see, and they will always be able to sit like this. But when they're becoming part of it, they understand that somebody's providing me with tooling that either can help me or not, and I need to take a much more engaged approach. I think for me, that is really the difference you're making, Jens, in the approaches.
It's a customer's project. We need to have them much more engaged and often. And that by that doing, you will deliver on time, on scope, on deliveries, because you have a fair discussion with the customer. What is most relevant?
Yeah, and I guess you can say that now that much of the value of the standard solution, Dynamics 365 or whatever it is coming through all the releases, that they keep control of the business processes, keep involving them, keep developing them. It's going to be super critical, because you cannot do like you normally did, wait 5 years and then upgrade to a new version. You have to keep doing that continuously, finding out how those new features, as you're explaining, fit with the business processes.
Your technical debt will grow year by year if you do not do this, because the developing is going faster and faster and faster.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think we have a couple of comments. That's a very good point from Etienne here, that people doing process mining because they have no clue what they are really doing. I've seen that as well. It is there is no way around it. Businesses really do need to take charge of how they work, and maybe that is the one critical factor that is often missing, and maybe that is a big reason why these ERP projects are failing, because management and staff on the customer side, even if it's internal or not, they think it's an IT thing. They don't know that it's the business. It's how we work and how we want this tool to support us.
People create results. IT systems support them in creating results, and they do that by running through a sequence of activities described in the process.
That's a great point. So I think it was very enlightening and very interesting. Not sure if we have any last questions, but other than that, I just want to say thank you, Jens, for taking the time to share your experiences with us. I think there was something in it, even though, of course, much of it is something we already know.
Yes.
I guess that's
there's nothing new here.
Yeah, no, but I think that's always the challenge. I heard in the medical field, they have invested in all kinds of modern technology, and it has never delivered any benefits. But some of the main basic things are the fact that they don't remember to wash their hands before surgery, and then you get an infection. So it's always the knowledge that we have already that we fail to apply and use. So I guess it cannot be any other way. You don't have any silver bullet, but you're just saying, remember to do what we already agreed to do.
Yeah, exactly. And then stick to it, because it's tough to get people on that journey. You have to be a bit consistent, because it takes time, and people do not see the benefit before later down the road. When they start testing, they see the benefit, and when the first release comes from Microsoft, they see the benefits again.
Yeah, that's great. Well, maybe we can keep going, but maybe we should leave it at that.
Sorry.
So thank you, everybody, for your attention. Hope you hung in there, and the recording will be shared as well.
And sorry for the speed talking in the end, but